So I hope it's somewhat working. I'm actually not quite sure what exactly is working and what isn't. So I'm gonna check. Yes, this works. Okay. So guys, give me a little time to prepare. I know nobody's online yet anyway. So I'm just gonna take a little time to share the link. So yeah, sorry for the small delay. I just had to get everything in order. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a sort of reboot of MarkTech, which will be half YouTube, half Apple Podcast. But this right now is just my knee-jerk reaction to the Apple announcements that we got today. It was kind of a lot, and some of it was kind of surprising. So I hope that whoever can join, I know I'm probably going to be alone for today, but in the future, maybe we can have some nice chats. You can ask questions, and we will see how this channel keeps evolving. I want to apologize again for not being there as a content creator for quite a while, despite making a video a while back saying I am back. But I have resolved most of my health issues and some personal stuff, so I'm feeling quite good actually. And I hope that it all just keeps getting better and better from here. I don't quite know if the audio was yet not that good. I think it was trying to capture audio from the screen. So OBS has also changed a little bit from my setup because I didn't save my last one. I hope you can give me some leeway, and in the future we will see improvements together. And I'm always obviously welcoming constructive criticism. And as a side note, this ain't gonna be a video as long as my previous ones. At least I'm trying not to do it because I hope to deliver much more frequent content and hopefully higher quality in terms of what I'm babbling about, basically. But I'm gonna try to make each individual video shorter, and the content is gonna be free form, so non-scripted, and we'll see how that develops. If you're gonna maybe insist on some more scripted content, or maybe some less regular but higher quality content, but I'm obviously welcome to all of that in the future. So I'm testing Chrome for last time if everything is working. Yes, and I'm seeing that I'm all alone in the world with my live stream. That's obviously not a problem right now. That's exactly what I thought it would be. Yes, but whoever wants to join, just leave a message in the chat and I will hopefully see it. If not, you will just be able to enjoy chat with myself. All right, so let's get to the juicy part, which were today's Apple announcements. And I'm going to start with the thing most exciting for myself. And I know that's kind of weird, but I've been waiting for new Apple TV for a while. And this is the new Apple TV, still 4K. Its most major enhancement to video capabilities is HDR10. And from the hardware perspective, it changes the A12 chip to an A15 chip. Ironically, I haven't yet found if it's a 4-core GPU A15 or a 6-core one, since I think Apple will want thermals to be managed well and stuff. I would bet on the 4-core GPU version. So yeah, not much changed. Pricing has come down. It's now $129. I'm gonna refrain from any pricing outside of US dollar because it's also freaking volatile. I myself am in Germany, so everything is much more expensive for me. The euro pretty much crashed in comparison to the US dollar. Plus, we've got value added tax included in the suggested price on the website. So yeah, and this is also the device that I already ordered in the 128 gigabyte configuration. So let me be clear. Why am I so excited for this? Because when you look at the tech specs, there isn't that much new. There's now a Wi-Fi only and an Ethernet version. Obviously, I bought the one with Ethernet. The Ethernet version also differentiates itself by supporting thread networking. Don't know why. I don't know if there is some kind of hardware limitation for that, but let's see. What reviews tell us. They both have HDMI 2.1. They both still have Wi-Fi 6, not Wi-Fi 6E like the newest iPad Pro, but that's kind of expected at this price range. And they both still have a little surprisingly Bluetooth 5.0, neither 5.2 or the latest 5.3. But then again, this is also the kind of device that it still will be able to connect to your Xbox or DualSense controller, your AirPods. It might do it with a little less, with a little more latency in comparison to your latest Bluetooth 5.3 iPhone or iPad, but fundamentally it will still get the job done. Yeah, and the most exciting part about the remote, I've been playing with the thought of getting the new Siri remote for quite a while, and now that it has USB-C, I am 100% convinced as I'm moving myself from the A10X version of the Apple TV. This is kind of a no-brainer. It's a new remote, it's much faster in both CPU and GPU, which was kind of questionable with the A12 upgrade over the A10X, which was faster in terms of CPU, but also kind of not an upgrade at all in terms of GPU. From what I understand, in terms of rumors, this will also be 4 gigs of RAM versus 3 gigabytes. And that's also kind of a big deal because if somebody of you still has like an Apple TV HD with far less RAM, you will notice that sometimes when you switch between an app like Netflix and YouTube, then it just isn't able to maintain a stream or the previous video that you were watching, especially if it was a high quality one, and then it reloads the entire app. I didn't have much problems on my Apple TV, so I just expect this one to be even more blazingly fast, even more reliable to get even longer, even better long-term support. But overall, there isn't that much else to say. I still am a big fan of the Apple TV in general. I'm also a big fan of Apple TV Plus, Apple's service, but obviously that one is available on other streaming devices as well, including the PlayStation 5 and Xbox. But what I love about the Apple TV is that it's really from the ground up optimized for video watching. It's super fast, it's super fluid. All its apps have a nice interface when they're sort of adhering to Apple guidelines, at least. Even integration with things like Fitness Plus work really, really well. And it's kind of expensive, I know, versus the Rokus and stuff in the world, but overall I still prefer it over any of that, or even like I have an LG C2 TV, I still prefer my Apple TV over the native applications, and there's also bigger choice of apps on the Apple TV versus the LG store, let's put it like that. But you can see that it's just primarily a software device. Like even on this the website, Apple really keeps hammering home the point of like the content you can watch. At most, the hardware that is mentioned is like the remote itself with its buttons and how it works. And in the future, Apple is also going to be expanding Siri functionality on the TV, but I will talk about that once I have more information. It was kind of a little vague in what is coming and what is not, especially based on the region. So, yeah, that is the Apple TV. I sorry, I was a little excited, so I went quite quickly through it all. I'm gonna take a sip of water. So I hope, yeah, I hope my excitement kind of came through here because this is not a device that Apple upgrades often, but fundamentally this is the kind of upgrade that I really, really love. It reminds me a little bit of AirPods Pro 2. It's just a much better version of what we had before, even if the fundamentals kind of stay the same. So let's move to the iPad Pro. not the regular iPad. Because the iPad Pro is, there's more to talk about than with the Apple TV, but less to talk about than with the regular iPad, the 10th gen iPad. So with the iPad Pro, we are now talking about the sixth generation of iPad Pros, and this is the M2 version. Um, what's very important about it is that it's basically just an upgrade to the M2 chip. There is no form factor update, any kind of rumors about MagSafe, whether it be MagSafe or whether it be inductive iPhone style MagSafe. Yeah, they all didn't pan out. The accessories stayed the same. It now does some clever tricks with the Apple Pencil, I guess, but it's not really a necessity in my eyes. And this is kind of what I want my videos to really focus on the stuff that actually changes and could contribute to changes in your user experience. I don't want to be mentioning every kind of storage or RAM configuration or even the Bluetooth spec necessarily, unless it really has some dramatic difference, because I think that most people just don't notice that kind of stuff, regardless how much money you spend. Stuff like processing, networking, displays, speakers, they're all much more noticeable. And if Apple advertises some kind of meaningful enhancements in those areas, that's what I would like to talk about. So this iPad, it's very clearly, it's supercharged by M2. That's kind of been Apple's tagline with like the M series chips in general. Um, One side note though is like Apple shows here Octane X. They've announced in their short video that was summarizing the iPad 10th gen and the iPad Pro that Octane X, DaVinci Resolve, and Affinity Publisher are all coming to the iPad. And in my opinion, when you combine all of that with features like Stage Manager and with all the enhancements to iPadOS that we have seen since basically the introduction of iPadOS, since iPadOS 13, this is kind of a big deal and a lot of people aren't talking about it. So this is kind of where I would like to start, which is the iPad will be turning more and more into a pro machine, into a gaming machine. It will never be just simply a Windows device that supports any kind of app from maybe like even 10, 15 years ago. It will never have the completely regular macOS user interface. But for the people who love iPad, for the people who grew really accustomed to what the iPad is, me included, I think the iPad Pro is the ultimate expression of what iPad is. And with significantly better third party software support and hopefully eventually first party with apps like Xcode maybe coming, we already have a precursor to that with Swift Playgrounds. I hope that the iPad keeps evolving and replacing the regular what's a computer for more and more people. So Apple focuses on the M2 chip. It's the 8 core CPU, 10 core GPU version. So we don't have a bint version, just as we didn't have last time. We didn't have the 7 core GPU on the M1. We now don't have the 8 core GPU of the M2. So we have the best bin chips, and we don't really have that for maximum performance. As far as I understand, Apple is even advertising like only 15% faster CPU performance, which on the M2 MacBook Air they are actually advertising 18%. So Apple is kind of doing some tweaks here to make sure that it's sitting on the more optimum side of the power frequency curve. So maybe it's not like, maybe it's like 5% slower clocked, maybe just 3% slower clocked than the MacBook Air version, but that remains to be seen. In terms of GPU, we do have a very similar 35% uplift promise, but more interesting to me is the promise of 50% more memory bandwidth, which is likely coming just on the MacBook Air version from the switch to LPDDR5 6400 megahertz memory. So yeah, it's a very nice uplift, and I don't think anybody can really complain. Like I don't know what the uplift for the neural engine is. It's 40%. So basically every task that you will throw the iPad Pro, it will now do faster and or more efficiently. However, there is the side note that the M2 is known to consume a little more power at peak on the MacBook Air, but a little less power for everyday tasks. That's why, for example, the M2 MacBook Air has longer battery life in everyday tasks than the M1 version, even when you account for the larger battery, but a little less when you are constantly pegging the processor to the max. As for thermal issues, I cannot say. Like, we will have to see. The iPads have never been known to overheat or anything like that, so I hope it all works out. Then we do have the promise of now ProRes encoding and decoding, which also apparently will be integrated right away with DaVinci Resolve, which is very good. DaVinci Resolve is a surprisingly well optimized app for anybody who knows. It even is known to deliver some faster results on macOS than Final Cut Pro. I personally use Final Cut Pro whenever I have something to edit, but DaVinci Resolve is especially a great alternative in its free version. But otherwise, most of the specs stay the same. The 12.9-inch iPad Pro keeps the Pro Display XDR with mini LED. The 11-inch version still does not have one. So we had some announcements, rumors about that from Ross Young, pretty much saying that like supply for mini LED is still very limited, and Apple is focusing all of their supply chain on 13-inch screens and up. So the 12.9-inch iPad, the 14-inch MacBook Pro, the 16-inch MacBook Pro. So the 11-inch iPad still keeps the regular LCD panel with everything else still quite matched with ProMotion and P3 color gamut and 600 nits peak brightness for SDR content. It keeps Thunderbolt. I don't think it ever advertises it as Thunderbolt 4. It's just Thunderbolt slash USB 4. And that's because Thunderbolt 4 as a standard requires to support multiple screen outputs. And Apple is currently limiting the base M series chips to just one extra display. We have seen that with the MacBook Airs, and we are seeing that with the iPads too. However, this is now a much better image than we had before. Now, thanks to Stage Manager, the iPad obviously can fully leverage an external screen, whether it be 16 by 9 or even 21 by 9, which I hope will soon be re-enabled, because we had that being disabled in one of the last betas of iOS 16.1, which is going to launch alongside all the devices that were just being announced in terms of iPads, and it's also going to launch simultaneously with macOS Ventura. So the cameras are pretty much the same. The one thing that Apple does advertise with the cameras, it's not actually here, it's in the tech specs, and that is Smart HDR4 for photos. Whether Apple changed anything about the actual sensor, I don't know. It's probably has more to do with the better integration with right here it says Smart HDR4. It probably has something to do with just with the integration of the better image signal processor of the M2 chip. That also now means that it's now capable of ProRes video recording up to 4K at 30 FPS or 1080p at 30 FPS for the 128GB version. Those are the same restrictions and capabilities as the iPhone. Gonna take another sip. I apologize, guys. It's 1:30 a.m. So, but I was so excited about all the stuff being announced, I just couldn't leave it out. So, yeah, let's go back to the website itself. What else does Apple advertise? Yeah, the same Pro cameras. LiDAR still pretty much known to be useless for most tasks, but again, stuff like Polycam, which I actually use quite a lot, and Planner 5D, which I use whenever I'm buying something new for my apartment. So it's great stuff, but it's not very much used, and it doesn't say if it has any improvements, though the integration with a faster neural engine could help definitely. Then we have Wi-Fi 6E and 5G. Now, we don't have specific mentions of improvements to 5G. However, it supposedly has two less LTE bands, which actually is a good sign because it could mean that it's using a newer modem. The previous M1 iPad was using the one that I have was using the X55 modem, so this is probably either an X60 or even more likely the X65 modem that we also have in the iPhone 14 series, which is now actually delivering some of the best cellular connectivity results of any phone, kind of uncharacteristic for the iPhone. So I hope that the iPad also really steps it up and that the new modem is also more efficient. Now, for anybody who's been on Twitter for the last couple of hours, there has been a little bit of controversy for Wi-Fi 6E, and I'm going to show it right in the tech specs. And that's because Apple doesn't note the 6 gigahertz spectrum specifically for Wi-Fi 6E. However, for anybody who reads anything about Wi-Fi 6E, there is no Wi-Fi 6E without the inclusion of 6 gigahertz spectrum. Now, it does say here simultaneous dual band for 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. That means that it can probably aggregate 2.4 and 5 gigahertz for faster connectivity, but it cannot do so for Wi-Fi 6E because 6 gigahertz itself delivers so much bandwidth that pairing it with any other band wouldn't really result in performance improvements, but it would likely kill battery life, for example. So this now delivers a top speed of 2.4 gigabits per second versus 1.2 before. So it's 2 times faster. It doesn't say here, I read it on the other comparison sheet. And Bluetooth 5.3, just like the latest iPhone. So that is quite nice. Interestingly enough, the new iPad Pro still includes a nano SIM and doesn't go eSIM only like the iPhone. So what else do we have? I don't actually think we have that much more. We still have the same Magic Keyboard and Apple Pencil, which will be interesting to note whenever we get to the 10th gen iPad. And yeah, Apple just advertises like iPadOS 16 in general, which will be an interesting update, and I'm gonna review it once it launches, like a little after launch, since I've been living with the betas now for quite a while. So yeah, this is the iPad Pro. When you actually look at the storage configurations, it's the same as before. 128, 256, and 512 are coupled with 8 gigs of RAM, and 1 terabyte and 2 terabyte have 16 gigabytes. So there is no 24 gigabyte version as we had on the M2 MacBook Air, which also would kind of be meaningless in my opinion. Like my M1 iPad Pro doesn't close basically any old apps, and I have the 256 gigabyte storage, 8 gigas of RAM version. So yeah, I don't think there's any reason to worry to be getting a 1 or 2 terabyte unless you actually need the storage, then get it. If you're buying it for the RAM, then don't. I don't think it's necessary. The pricing in the US has stayed the same. It has gone up quite a bit in the rest of the world, but as I said, I'm not going to comment on European prices in this video. I think I'm going to do a video specifically about European prices, specifically about prices in my region of Germany. Just kind of summarizing them for the entire Apple portfolio. I don't want it to just be, because it will be useless for most of you watching. And even if you are from Germany and watching one of my videos, I still think that you will just go to the website, look at it, you will get the impressions that I give you, and then decide if it's enough value for you. Like, I don't know your income, I don't know your personal outlooks in terms of finances, so I really want to refrain ever from giving value perspectives, especially on the highest end versions. I think once we go to the mid and low range, there is much more of a reason to be talking specifically about price to performance and value, because then we understand the clientele for those devices much more. Like just people who want to save as much money as possible or want to spend a decent amount but without breaking the bank. Whenever you're buying an iPad Pro, I kind of expect for you to be able to spend at least around a grand. And with the new European prices, believe me, you're gonna end up paying at least that. So that was the iPad Pro. I'm not obviously as excited for it as I am for the Apple TV 4K. However, I disagree with some of the disappointing sentiments about it online, because some people are saying it's not a big gen to gen upgrade. Well, yeah, that's kind of the point. Going forward, even if we got a huge redesign, or if we got a change to OLED, or if we got like even like a 3 nanometer chip, I don't think that any gen to gen upgrade will actually be worth upgrading unless you have a really, really good way of either selling or handing down your previous iPad. In the future, I don't think that anything below a 2 generation gap will make sense, and I kind of think that 3 generation or even a 4 generational gap will be really where you get the best value and the best experience for an upgrade. But now, talking about upgrades, we will be talking about the most significant upgrade that was discussed, and that is the 10th generation iPad. And surprisingly, all the rumors, until some of the more recent ones, were pretty much garbage, which were rumors about either a 10.5-inch screen or maybe no screen change at all, maybe the inclusion of a home button. We also didn't quite see that the camera, if you look here, would be repositioned here to the longer edge instead of the shorter one, so it's much better for video calling. And it's kind of surprising if we go back to the iPad Pro here, that we have the camera still on this side but not here. And the reason why we don't have it is because the iPad Pro connects to the Apple Pencil here. This is not just a magnetic connection, it does include inductive charging. And so there is no space unless you are like really offset the camera to here or here. And here, Apple prioritized the camera over the inclusion of Apple Pencil 2. And this is what sort of killed my excitement for this device. Unless you really don't want to be using it with an Apple Pencil, then I don't think it's worth it regardless of price. If you have any plan of using an Apple Pencil, then I highly recommend getting either an iPad Air or the lowest config 11-inch iPad Pro, because this does have noticeable drawbacks. However, if you aren't using an Apple Pencil, then it's a fantastic device. Or if you don't need Stage Manager, then it's also a fantastic device. But we will talk about the potential mitigations for those shortcomings very soon. So first of all, let's talk about what I absolutely adore about this device. And that is actually the keyboard accessory, which is, I believe, called the Magic Keyboard Folio. But man, this website is a little cluttered for my taste. Yes, this is the Magic Keyboard Folio. So it works very similar to everybody who knows it, the Logitech one that we've had for a little while now, for basically across the range. But what it doesn't do, it doesn't cover up the edges of the iPad. Those are still bare, just as they are on the Magic Keyboard or Apple's Folio covers. And I loved it, especially with like the new colors. And it now has a function row, and it can adjust the stand on the back. It's also perfectly positioned for like video calls. Now it doesn't have the cool like hovering thing from the Magic Keyboard, but I honestly never saw much point in that. So this is a much more versatile thing. It also has the smart connector still on the bottom, not on the back. So this connects to it, and on the back we just have a magnetically attached like cover with a stand. So yeah, man, this website is a little nonsensical because it just doesn't focus on what's best, right? You saw it. Unfortunately, the video is such a mess. Right, so here it attaches to the keyboard, and on the back you see basically the cover with the stand. Here it attaches magnetically, and here you can see the different angles at which you can prop it up. Now, why am I talking more about the accessory than the iPad itself? Well, the iPad itself is nice, right? It has four beautiful colors: silver, obviously barely a color, but yellow, pink, and the blue is absolutely gorgeous. That's what I would be getting if I would be purchasing this iPad. It has a 10.9-inch screen with the same resolution and 500 nits brightness as the iPad Air. However, this is not a laminated screen. It shouldn't be too much of a difference in quality, though it does noticeably improve reflections and glare. However, for anybody who's using an Apple Pencil, you know that Apple Pencil just sounds different when you're using it on a laminated screen versus a non-laminated one. Like, it just feels like you are pressing it against something more hollow. Now it has the A14 Bionic, which is obviously fast. It is in many ways faster than A12X or a Z chip. However, unlike those chips, it is not getting Stage Manager, at least not at this point in time. Not even the scaled back version of Stage Manager that the A12X and Z are getting. Otherwise, it now has a nice landscape stereo speakers. It obviously still has good microphones and everything. I don't think you will really notice that big of a difference. Yes, the studio mics on an iPad Pro will be much better, but even like it uses a very similar camera. It's a very good iPad, but let's get to the biggest compromise that I've been talking about for a while, which is that it supports the first generation Apple Pencil, that is dating all the way back to late 2015, to the introduction of the first iPad Pro that I ever bought, the first iPad Pro ever, and that is baffling to me. Now it does switch finally to USB-C, so Apple is really moving full speed ahead with USB-C. But obviously, first generation Apple Pencil uses Lightning. So let's us look at the iPad accessories. There it is, got the Apple Pencil. So we have the Apple Pencil, it's $100, and it's obviously known for its Lightning connector that attaches to the iPad exactly here, and it's also used for charging. And that is why, given that we now have a USB-C iPad, sorry guys, ringing for air because I'm so exasperated with the news, right? We're now looking at accessories, which also now includes the USB-C to Apple Pencil adapter. And that is just bad design, in my opinion. Like, I think that Apple is the best design company when it comes to consumer technology out there, especially considering the scope that they have with the kind of multiple product categories and subcategories of devices depending on the price range. This is terrible. Like, I don't have anything to say to defend it unless, well, if you sort of once put it into it, like, look at this garbage. It's the USB-C to Apple Pencil adapter is required to pair and charge Apple Pencil first generation with iPad 10th gen. Your Apple Pencil plugs into one end of the adapter, and the USB charge cable from your iPad plugs into the other. Can somebody explain why it doesn't instead have, like here, that's the lightning part, the female lightning part, where the lightning from the Apple Pencil inserts, and then it has a female USB-C plug. Why doesn't it have a male USB-C port that then moves into the iPad? Right? I know it would be an exposed port that could break, but then so can any cable. At least then you could just put this on your Apple Pencil and forget it. And then whenever you need it, you just insert it into the iPad as you did before, which is, yes, old and antiquated design, but it works. Now you need a freaking cable all the time to reconnect and charge it. That is horrible. Like the iPad is an all day battery life device. You don't always have a cable with you. Like if you're just drawing and if you like maybe want to take it to the park, like you don't want to be having a cable with you so that you can connect your Apple Pencil. And yes, the Apple Pencil can stay connected to the iPad once it connects, but then you also have to make sure that it never loses charge, that you never turn off Bluetooth on your iPad, because the second you do that, then you have to reconnect those devices with that terrible connection method. And I don't think that the landscape, well positioned front camera was worth this trade off. And when I look at the iPad itself, let me give some suggestions to Apple's obviously much better design team than I am, but I think that sometimes problem solving does require a mind that hasn't actually worked on something. Now, Apple does have stereo speakers, but maybe there would be room on the shorter side for the Apple Pencil if you got rid of the Touch ID power button and then moved it here. However, I still understand that it will still be covering the speakers. That obviously is not a great solution, because the Apple Pencil is basically almost as long as the entire short side of the iPad. So what else can we do? Well, we can take this camera and move it here. We can then reposition those buttons up to here, which is what Apple has done with the iPad mini. And then we have a place here for the magnetic connection and charger for the Apple Pencil. And then the camera is just ever so slightly offset, which, yes, just like Apple, I also hate asymmetry, but this is a far, far better solution than what they have come up with. Like a slightly off-center camera, especially one that supports ultra wide, so it will perspective correct anyway if you're slightly off center. That is what you should be doing, not forcing people to use the first generation Apple Pencil because you couldn't make it work with the second generation one. And for just $150 more, you're getting the iPad Air with the same storage amount, double the memory, double the RAM amount, the M1 chip versus the A14, which will still be, I believe, longer supported than the A14 version, or at least will just be much better performing for quite a while. You have a laminated screen, so it will look a little better and feel a little better when you're using your Apple Pencil. And obviously, you have the much better connection for the iPad Air, which, when you will look at it, obviously it's the same as with the iPad Pro. It's basically what it should be. So when we look at the iPad Air, yeah, it's the same device basically, but it's a much more elegant solution in my opinion with the Apple Pencil. And with the M1, you will also get Stage Manager and whatever other enhancements that the M1 will get in the future. So I highly recommend, if you can spend those extra $150, you will probably spend those anyway on accessories. Just get it, and then everything from the Magic Keyboard to the Apple Pencil, like, it will all have the chance to actually improve your user experience. However, there is one thing that works to the favor of the base iPad, and that is, I'm sorry, the Logitech Crayon. Now, this is an often forgotten accessory, but it's actually quite useful. It's $69. Nice. It's now USB-C, so we got the old Lightning version. This is USB-C. It connects effortlessly to the iPad. you can even see that this is the new one, so it's right away advertised with this iPad. So it's $30 cheaper than the first generation Apple Pencil. It will be far less of a hassle to use. Yeah, I don't have any words to say. Like, let's go to the video. Yeah, it works just as you would want. Now, it also doesn't attach magnetically or anything, but at least if you throw it in your bag, you won't need an extra cable to connect it. Yeah, so I'm sorry for the rant that I kind of went on here, but yeah, the Logitech Crayon would be my choice. It is also completely like normally rechargeable. It doesn't use batteries, like exchangeable batteries. It uses fully rechargeable lithium ions ones. So even like the old complaint that I had with like some Surface pencils, like it all goes away here. It is also beautiful. If you get like the silver iPad, it will perfectly match it basically. And it's still such a neutral color that it will work with any of the more colorful iPads. So I kind of went on a rant against Apple, and then in the end, I defended them, right? Let us go very quickly to the Magic Keyboard Folio, right? So it is cheaper. It has a built-in trackpad and a two-piece design. So I highly, highly want this actually instead of the Magic Keyboard for the pros in the future. But I hope those will at least have backlit keys. Cannot find any notion of whether or not those are backlit, so I kind of just assume that they are not. And because yeah, because it's white accessory, I think Apple is kind of betting that like the illumination from the screen with a little reflection from the white keys will help you along. So it's not quite how I like it to be, but it's still much better than, in my opinion, the Magic Keyboard, which is fully fixed in one position in terms of the iPad. So if you want to use your iPad without the keyboard part, the back is not protected. And the angle adjustment here, I think, is still nicer and actually more versatile than on the Magic Keyboard, which I hope that maybe we'll get a Magic Keyboard that actually has like a second hinge to change the angle even more. But at this point, we got what we got. And given that some of it has been a little disappointing, I'm not gonna bet on new stuff going to be like super innovative, at least for the next year or two. Maybe when we got like 2024, maybe when we are supposed to get like OLED iPads, who knows, maybe then. So the iPad is a nice device, the 10th gen one, but it's much more expensive. And this is where I will say, like, if you really need to save a buck, if you really don't care about like the nicer features, and you also don't need maybe like the even nicer features of an iPad Air or Pro, get the 9th gen iPad, get it refurbished, get it on clearance. You will easily get it below 300 bucks nowadays. Both start at 64 gigabytes, so you aren't losing anything in that regard. The screen is also non-laminated and has the same pixel density. There is not a big change. Yes, you will get a much better back camera here, a better position front camera when you're using it with a keyboard, a nicer keyboard accessory. You will get the more interesting color choices, the larger screen, the faster performance of the A14. But those are not things that I would consider worth paying like a third more, even more actually than a third more, and kind of like over 50% more when you consider the discounts. So this is why my recommendation would still go to the 9th gen iPad, especially if you're getting something for the kids. Like, this is just not worth it. If you really need something for the school and you don't need an Apple Pencil, then get it, or get it with a Logitech Crayon. but just get an iPad Air. It will survive for longer. It will be more versatile. Yes, it's a significantly higher investment, but in my opinion, a worthwhile one. And then if you really want to save money, just go to the iPad ninth gen route and then see if like your kid might actually need a laptop in the future, right? So this then becomes a secondary device and it suddenly doesn't matter that it's a little older. But if you're getting this and then adding $250 for the keyboard, and you're also getting like the $100 Apple Pencil, but suddenly you also need the $9 um, connector, and then maybe you're getting an extra cable, so you don't lose it. Maybe if you ever lose like one USB-C cable, so you have an extra one. Like, no, just get this, please. Unless you don't need an Apple Pencil, then get this. Unless you need Stage Manager, then get the iPad Air. Unless you need much better features like ProMotion and XDR displays, then get the iPad Pro. So maybe I will do a breakdown. And I also forgot the iPad Mini, which, yeah, just get it if you need a smallish, nice iPad. But yeah, not don't get it for productivity either, because it's like it's 60% more expensive than the iPad third generation basically, and I don't think it's worthwhile even with an A15 chip. Which is also interesting that this gets an A14. I kind of would have preferred it to be an A15 for the nicer graphics. We see from the Apple TV that it doesn't really cost much extra to go with the A15 over any kind of other processor. So yeah, that was quite a little bit of a rant and a little bit of a defense rant. I'm very sorry if I was talking very quickly. I'm getting a little excited to be back. I'm very excited to be hopefully delivering you content at least once a week, hopefully more often, at least in the foreseeable future. And I will let you know how it all evolves in the future. But for now, this was Mark Tech on YouTube live stream. If I manage to get it to work, it will also be an Apple podcast over in the next couple of days. But I'm bidding you goodbye. I'm hoping to see you soon, very soon even. And I thank you very much for all your support, and I'll catch you guys next time.